So, really good colleague of mine, and of course, really good personal friend of mine, which we talk all day about sports, whether it's the NFL or Major League Baseball. And he covers up both sides, of course, with the Raiders and the New York Mets. And the one house that you could definitely catch it all is on Hammer's house. And so, joining me via the Global Satellite Network presented by StreamYard, Jeoff Hammond joining me of the Hammer's house. Um, things do not appear to be looking good for the Raiders, and I don't know what it may be. I mean, it might be a Josh McDaniels thing. Um, it was such an embarrassment. And listen, I picked the Raiders against New Orleans that week. It was very embarrassing to see that type of performance. So now you're facing Jacksonville this week. Is there a possibility somewhere in the middle, whether the defense or the offense, that Josh McDaniels could make a serious change to get the Raiders to bounce back and be better?
I really think it's McDaniels at this point. We've heard the conversations in the past about this offensive scheme and everything, and how it's very complex and it's very difficult to learn. Look, we are in week 9. If they couldn't seem to get it down at this point, you should have dummied it down weeks ago. The talks about our rankings and, oh, we're third in offense. That's an amazing story, bro. We're 2-5. Stats, rankings don't mean shit unless you're fucking winning. The defense, we didn't spend the money we should have. We put almost $500 million into our offense. We still need a legit defensive tackle that can cause pressure along the offensive line. We need another guy in the secondary. We need another linebacker. A lot of things were not done. Didn't make a single move during the trade deadline. We're just playing it out now. You guys are assessing these players the rest of the year, but realistically, and I had said this last night, I really think that the Raider fans, the media, jumped the gun way too much. This realistically is a 2 to 3 year plan. We just need to let this rock the rest of the year and see what happens. Do I think that we can win tomorrow? I think it's going to be a very close game. Jacksonville comes in not winning a game in October. They're just coming back from London with that loss. I think it's going to end up being a very, very close game tomorrow.
Yeah, it's going to be quite the interesting game. And here's what's funny about this. So Mark Davis talked about this in one of the press conferences, and it almost kind of smells like, it almost kind of seems like there's a talk about Josh McDaniels and possibly on the coaching spot. We actually saw this a week ago with Nathaniel Hackett, because if Denver lost against Jacksonville in London, Hackett was going to be gone, which rightfully so, because this is embarrassing for Russell Wilson, and it's kind of embarrassing for Denver as a whole, knowing they're trying to change up the look of the Broncos. Does it kind of feel like there's an awful lot of pressure, similarly to what happened with Nathaniel Hackett, and then here coming this week for Josh McDaniels? So do you think that might be something that could be prevailing, or do we already kind of see the seats getting red hot and Josh McDaniels just does not know how to handle it?
No, because Mark Davis has already spoken to him behind closed doors after 2 games this season, including the loss to the Saints. And Mark Davis already made it known to the public the other day that McDaniels is going to be here for years to come. So people that are all fire McDaniels, it's not happening right now. We have to deal with that for the time being, but he is the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders moving forward.
So I do want your opinion on this, because, first of all, during the offseason, lots of guys got their extensions. Obviously, Devontae Adams, after getting acquired, he got his contract extension to stay there in Vegas. Derek Carr got his extension. Darren Waller, I think a lot of people are they're skeptical about, obviously, with what his playmake has been. They're skeptical of, did we regret signing Darren Waller to this extension? To me personally, I don't think so. Because if you look around the league, you need to have some type of star tight end, like a George Kittle, like Travis Kelce. So I don't regret the Raiders signing. But looking at Josh Jacobs, though, he is having himself a hell of a year, and he's making a statement known. I do belong here. Is there a possibility the Raiders could work out a deal, and a reasonable deal, that may keep Josh Jacobs and hopefully have the development of Zamir White and be the best running back tandem in the league?
I think Jacobs is going to end up getting franchise tagged. It sucks that they didn't pick up the 5th-year option. Jacobs is a guy that I've been high on, even coming out of Bama into the draft. I was like, this is baby beast mode. We need to have him here. As long as he stays healthy and continues to do what he's doing, but it's not really him. It really falls on Josh McDaniels as well. Mm-hmm. As you guys saw last week, they steered away from the run game. He had 10 touches total for 43 yards. And the previous weeks, he had carried for well over 300, 400 yards in 3 games. It really comes down to what the play calling is going to be by Josh McDaniels. If they continue to ground and pound, have more of a balanced offense, then look, this guy could potentially, we could see him getting close to 2,000 yards rushing this year if he's healthy. But I understand why they did decline the option on him, Abram, Klee, with Waller in this contract extension. It's like he had 2 years remaining, average salary of about $6.5 million. He didn't do anything last year. He missed a lot of time last year with this back injury, the knee injury, and now he comes in, he gets his extension, and now has issues with the hamstring. The last time he really had solid numbers was 2019 in John Gruden's offense. You didn't give these guys options, or you declined their options rather, but you gave Waller an extension for what? Because he's not doing anything for us right now. And I hope he can turn this around, but we have to wait and see.
Yeah, hopefully that he can be able to turn this around, because this is one thing that, like you said, the Raiders spent an awful lot of money on offense, and you got to have these guys produce. I mean, and again, I think Darren Waller's a terrific player. Does injuries happen? Absolutely they do. But I wouldn't give up on a product that that you've seen him in the last couple of years here in Vegas and what he's capable of doing. Because could you imagine if he got shipped out of town and then all of a sudden he starts producing for a different team? The Raiders would be feeling a different type of way after all that.
Of course.
So, yeah, and to me, that's why I'm like, give it some time with Darren Waller. But the one thing that has to happen, and this is kind of hard because Derek Carr has been statistically really good in the last couple of seasons, and it just kind of seems like he's hit a roadblock. Is that part of the offensive line started to deteriorate outside of Colton Miller and a couple of other pieces? What are you seeing currently with Derek Carr? And is it something, I know it's a touchy subject for Raider fans, but is there something you might be seeing this year that might make you a little bit skeptical and think we may look at our options, but this right now is what we have left to deal with?
The offensive line definitely has played a part in it. Look, run blocking, they're doing a phenomenal job. Mm-hmm. Pass blocking is still suspect as hell. I really wish we would have tried to get a veteran right tackle. They've been going back and forth with Jermaine Illuminor and Thayer Mumford. I get why they brought back Illuminor. He had the familiarity with the offensive scheme and everything, but he's not cutting it, averaging at least 2 penalties a game. It's like McDaniels is doing him a favor. Oh, you're starting this week. He'll be in there for a series or two, and then it's like, all right, get off the field, Mumford, you're in. And Mumford has been on the heels of Illuminor throughout training camp and everything, and he's doing a pretty solid job. Our 3rd-round draft pick out of Kentucky, Dylan Parham, very versatile offensive lineman. When Andre James was out with the concussion, he filled in at center. You can plug and play him on either side of the center. You can put him at center. He's doing a really good job as a rookie so far. Again, I do think it's the offensive play calling, and it appears from something that I was listening to the other day that McDaniels is the one who's calling this stuff. But when it comes to the checkdowns, it's not necessarily Derek Carr. They'll audible to something else, but it's something that McDaniels wants, and at times it doesn't succeed. The trick plays, that stuff's got to stop. It really is insanity. You're repeating the same thing over and over again to get a different result or expecting a different result. and still it's not positive yardage 9 times out of 10. So
yeah, no, that's interesting though. Jeoff Hammond joining me here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. That is very interesting. And the fact that you would think Josh McDaniels would have learned his ways since being with Tim Tebow in Denver and in this division in the AFC West because of how difficult it is. You would think he would have learned that by now. And it is interesting coming from a team that last year, out of all the chaos with the John Gruden thing, and then players, obviously, the Henry Ruggs situation, everybody else, and then you had Rick Bisaccia as the head coach. Could you have seen this in a different way, knowing of the team made the playoffs with an interim coach? And do you think Rick Bisaccia, if they didn't go through with Josh McDaniels, could we have seen a different aspect of this team if he had still been, if he had possibly gotten the head coaching job for the Raiders full time?
It's tough to say because who are you going to bring in as the rest of your coaching staff? Who's going to be your offensive coordinator? Who's going to be your defensive coordinator? Because I know you wouldn't have kept the same guys around.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to say. And at the same time, look, the new regime, the new front office are the ones that brought in some of these guys. Devontae Adams, Chandler Jones, Rocky Yassin, Anthony Averett. So I think they did right in regards to this new front office and everything. But again, a lot of us jumped the gun. We need to be patient. This is legitimately a 2 to 3 year plan. I know everybody, they're going to go to the Super Bowl this year. No, just relax, be patient, and just let the rest of the season play out the way it needs to play out, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And the interesting part of that is because the next year, the Super Bowl is up in Las Vegas. So maybe there's an eyeball from there that if things don't happen by this year, maybe, just maybe, they're circling up that next year on that portion of it, knowing it's in Vegas. A lot will be up on the line, so maybe there's a possibility they might be focusing their attention onto what may be ahead for next year. But yeah, I agree with you with that. I do think it's one, they have to be patient because this is not something that gets done overnight, and this is something that the Raiders, they obviously have to evaluate a lot of things. I do love a lot of their offensive potentials, but if this offensive line is not completely secured from the passing blocking standpoint, and then the rest of the defense, because you're looking around the league. I mean, you got speedsters all around. Miami's got a hell of an offensive weaponry type of team. Kansas City now just got Kadarius Toney. So, and that's an interesting thing. So with Kansas City getting Kadarius Toney, they're filling in the spot that Tyreek Hill just had. If that were when the Raiders do face the Chiefs again, how exactly would the Raiders approach that, knowing that you have Juju Smith-Schuster, who I think is a great route runner, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who can obviously go deep downfield, and then there's Kadarius Toney with his speed, with his hands. How do you think that may impact, especially for the rest of the teams in the division?
Kadarius Toney is a guy that, I'm on the East Coast, so I obviously hear more about New York sports than anything else. But Kadarius Toney is a guy that's almost never available. He's one of those receivers that's just very often injured. And when it comes to Kansas City, they have a whole bunch of number 2 receivers right now. We know who Patrick Mahomes' go-to guy is. We saw it when we played them in Monday night a month ago, and that's Travis Kelce. Dude had 7 receptions for 25 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like, what? Like, that's not supposed to happen. But I stated this earlier, and I'm going to continue to think this way. Again, I'm very optimistic the rest of the way for this team. I think that the Week 18 matchup at home against the Chiefs could have some serious implications on where these teams could potentially be seated in the playoffs and potentially a division winner as well. I look, Kansas City is very talented. we all looked at this AFC West being like historically the toughest division in the NFL. That's not the case right now.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen the ups and downs between the Chargers, the Raiders, the Broncos. The Chargers, I said this when you guys were signing everybody left and right during the offseason. You guys better have your health insurance paid up.
Yep.
You see a lot of guys dropping like flies over there. Glad we didn't go for J.C. Jackson. Bosa. It's just one thing after another with the injury bug. Even Herbert taking that rib shot. It's a very this season as a whole in the NFL has been entirely upside down. Like nobody saw the Jets doing as good as they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody saw the Giants doing as good as they're doing. It's crazy right now.
Yeah, it's interesting. And even like I mentioned earlier on the show, talking about, first of all, I do like Emmanuel Acho. I think he's a very motivated person and he's very down to earth. But to basically say that Justin Herbert is an overrated quarterback. First of all, I just looked at stats. 12 touchdowns, 4 picks, and he's completing 66% of his throws with a quarterback rating of 91. Like, you can't throw an overrated title on a quarterback that, first of all, his franchise, and especially Dean Spanos, has always had a tendency to be frugal for the last 40 years. And second of all, you got injury bugs everywhere, and the only person who's really playing consistent is Khalil Mack. I can make the argument from there.
For now.
But, so it's like stuff like that. And I do agree, because the fact that, yes, there needs to be an insurance plan for a lot of these guys. We're starting to see that right now with the offensive weapons. And if, however the year goes, the Chargers miss the playoffs, I said this before, Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi, they're going to be out the door, because this clearly was a Spanos hire. And I don't know. I mean, I still am kind of optimistic that it could be Sean Payton looking at this thing. He lives in Los Angeles, loves golfing about there. So he could be looking at this scenario and say, we can get Justin Herbert there, or I'll make a take. Maybe they need to go and apologize to Shane Steichen in Philadelphia, because he'll be another one with an offensive-minded play calling and looking for a head coaching job. So maybe that's a possibility for the Chargers to maybe rekindle everything that he had from 2020 and maybe fix this team up.
Doubt it.
But so let's shift over to, and you talked about a lot about New York sports as well. And I actually just had I had Nikki Gist from the Third and Three podcast talking about this, but the energy levels in New York, I've been there 6 times in my life. And I used to love how the energy levels when walking down Manhattan and Times Square and everywhere else, you just see the lights are on. Everybody's energetic. Everybody loves, being around in the city. Only when New York teams are winning. And I'm looking at this whole scenario. The Rangers got to the Eastern Conference Final last year. And then the Islanders in the last couple of years kind of made some noise. And then now here we are with the Giants and Jets. It's just like New York now finally seems like they have a heartbeat. What are you seeing?
So I moved out of New York, I think it's been about 3 months now.
Mm-hmm.
I just recently stepped foot back in New York about 2 weeks ago. And I don't really hear anything. At least I haven't, because, I was out around Times Square, but this is like the middle of the night. So I'm not seeing the sport fans out. But I walked by the Empire State Building. I think it was Friday night. The Knicks just beat the hell out of the Pistons. So the Empire State Building was lit up in orange and blue. I know a lot of these fan bases right now are excited about their teams. Even baseball season, not the way a lot of us expected things to end with both the Mets and the Yankees. But look, it's just a surge all of a sudden with all these teams doing really, really well. And then you have back page news for the wrong reasons with the Nets. But I'm not even going to get into that. The Jets and the Giants. The Jets were one of 3 teams that I had said had a very, very solid draft. The Jets, the Ravens, and the Eagles. And we see what the Eagles are doing as well right now. I think that the energy that was brought in for the Giants with Brian Daboll as their new head coach And what he's doing for Daniel Jones is tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely commend him for that, because I was one of those dudes that just was like, Daniel Jones is not the answer. Who the hell drafts a quarterback out of Duke in the first round? But he's definitely turned that team around tremendously. Same with the Jets. Again, that draft class, they've been doing solid. Vegas had the Jets at only winning 5.5 games this year.
Mm-hmm.
And look, they've already won their 5.
They could be on pace for 7 or 8 at this point.
They could be on for even more than that if they continue to do what they're doing right now. I really think so. And this is not a Jet fan. I'm very, very surprised to see both of these teams doing as well as they are right now, respectively in their divisions as well.
Absolutely. And thinking about that too, because we're even talking about, the trade deadline. And here's what's interesting about this. So we've been talking about Chicago for years and years and years and years, because the McCaskies seem to not throw away that 1950s television where we're tough, we're midway, we love the defense. Now they just got rid of a lot of pieces. They already got rid of Khalil Mack to the Chargers. They got rid of Roquan Smith to Baltimore, and they just got rid of Robert Quinn to Philadelphia. But yet they accumulated a lot of draft picks, and they got Chase Claypool. Is there a possibility that Justin Fields, we might actually see something there?
We might. I think right now, I think they finally got the picture that the team needs to run through their franchise quarterback. That's Justin Fields. And I think now that they finally got it, I think they are in somewhat of a rebuild. And I think they're also seeing what is going on right now, or what's not going on in Green Bay, where they have similar records, but they're like, hey, we might actually have a shot to even just get a wild card right now. Let's make these necessary moves to try to get Fields to succeed and see what happens moving forward the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that, because I do like Matt Eberflus, I really do think he's a I think he's a really good head coach. I think they hit the nail on that one. And then of course they've got their offensive coordinator, Luke Getsy, which I think is very, very he's very creative. And I do think maybe opening up this playbook a little more will help Chicago to finally realize, because you're looking around the league, there's not a whole lot of defensive coaches up out there. There's still a good select handful, but we're seeing with what happens with Robert Saleh. Very defensive, but he's a likable guy. He's very hyper and energetic. And again, you look at the Jets and you don't know if Zach Wilson's really the quarterback. They could be looking at it like, if we give him one more year, that's pretty risky. So it's like you either do or you don't want to end up drafting another quarterback at the end of it, just to seeing how this roster really works with him. Talking about, too, the Mets. So first of all, won 100 games, and then all of a sudden they lost in the postseason. Tough loss itself. What is just the mindset right now for a lot of Met fans, and just kind of seeing the bigger picture, and now what needs to happen during this offseason? Because there are a lot of big names out there on their roster that they're on free agency. What right now needs to happen for the Mets, and could they potentially build themselves to maybe get a deeper run in the postseason?
So this is pretty much similar to what I said before with the Raiders and what their plan is. Now, we all know that the Wilpons no longer own the Mets. Thank God. Steve Cohen took over 2 years ago. The very first thing he said in his first presser as owner of the Mets was that they have a 2 to 3 year plan to win a World Series. Year one, obviously, didn't do shit. Year two, look, we made it to the playoffs. We got in as a wild card. We won 100 games. We should have had the division. We were in first place almost in the entire season and just fell apart towards the tail end. Look, that's year two. We at least got into the playoffs. There's a lot of guys out there right now that are going to be on the free agent market. We've already seen potential deals and predicted numbers for these guys. Jacob deGrom, 3 year, $125 million. Edwin Diaz, 5 years, 105 million. Brendan Nimmo, 7 years, 145 million. Chris Bassett, 3 years, 66 million. Taijuan Walker, 5, 70. Look, we have the money now. We have an owner that actually wants to spend. I don't see why we don't bring back a handful of these guys. I would love to have DeGrom back here. Chris Bassett, I think he's a really good asset in the rotation. I would love to have him back. And bet your ass that I want Mr. Narcos himself, Mr. Timmy Trumpet, Edwin Diaz back, just so I can hear that damn song every single night at Citi Field in the 9th inning.
I knew you were going to end up saying something about that because that trumpet is just absolutely legendary, man. For real.
I've played it. I've played it in my house and have run down the stairs a few times here and there. That's my shit. My son is in the building. Shout out to my son. Love you, son.
So yeah, because I mean, looking at it, I mean, the Yankees, they obviously I knew that it was not going to be easy playing against the Cleveland Guardians, and the fact that they made it in the way that they did. But the fact that they faced the Astros and they couldn't end up winning a game, that was crazy. And then they dropped their ticket prices from $211 to $20 for, of course, to get some way to get the fan base to like buy stuff, whether it was, you know, the concession or it was the merchandises. Like I was just, yeah, I was like, that would have been a great time to go and see a Yankee game. I don't care how the Yankees play, but it's $20.
I'm glad they got swept. Look, I'm not a Yankee fan. I'll never be a Yankee fan. I don't care. My team was out. I'm not going to root for the evil empire that is the New York Yankees. And now with Aaron Judge, look, we could see him hop on that 7 train and make his way over to us. We could potentially see him in Dodger Blue. We could see him in San Francisco. It's very, very much up in the air right now.
So let me give you this here real quick. So we've got some big names, at least 3 of them that I can name off the top of my head, where we may see their fate at, and how much could they possibly pay them? Because remember, Juan Soto, he's going to be looking for some type of big deal contract, and whoever is going to pick that contract up is probably going to get somebody special for the fact that, first, he's young in age, and he's got really good production. So of at least 3, who would we say is going to a different place or could possibly be retained by the team?
So I think at this point, especially because they didn't win it all this year, I really don't see Judge coming back to the Yankees. And I'm sorry to you Yankee fans, but I'm really not. You made an offer to him. He kind of laughed it off like, nah, I'm testing the market. Like I said, with Judge, I think it could be one of 3 teams. I think it could be the Dodgers, the Giants, or even the Mets. I really do not think that he will come back to the Bronx. Soto, it's tough. This is another guy that very young. How many years are you looking to offer him? You know, Washington tried their best to try to keep him, and he said, hell no, I'm out. It's very, very hard to say right now where I could potentially see him. Look, if LA wants to spend that money again, I think maybe LA could be that team. Does Boston have interest in him? Maybe.
Ooh, yeah, that's going to be interesting.
It's very tough to say right now.
Now, they did say, because of course, you know, our friend Bobby, he's told me a lot about this. He's probably saying they're probably going to have to forego Xander Bogaerts because they do want to spend a lot of their money on Rafael Devers, which I've said it. Do you know anybody else that could be that good at that corner of at third base? Like anybody else up on that market? It's a little flat. That's why I'm like, you better retain him, because that's a hard position to really, like, if you have somebody in the farm system that you could build up, that is going to be hard to replace.
Only other third baseman I can think of right now, and he's a little up there in age, but I think he still has at least another 2, maybe 3 years left. If the Dodgers don't try to hold on to him, is my old teammate Justin Turner. And Justin Turner is another guy that I'm thinking the Mets were dumb to let him go in the first place. I would not mind seeing him back and having a left side tandem of him and Francisco Lindor. That would be insane.
Oh my God. And the fact that he adjusted a lot of his swing too, like you've seen how he was in New York, he was getting to that point where he was going to be really productive and then comes to Los Angeles and now his production's through the roof. Like
averaging, I think his batting average since he was in LA was like 296.
Yeah, it's like close
with
to
a
like
with
well
an
in 300s.
like with an OPS of like 0.850, and I was like, fuck, like,
and he's hitting what 20 plus bombs a year.
Yeah.
Like, that's insane. Like it's crazy. Oh, the Dodgers are about to dump the bag on Trey. That's going to be an interesting. That is going to be an interesting talk because there's a lot of talks about Trey Turner with whether the Dodgers, the Cubs right now. I've been hearing this from Mike Hughes a lot. He's like, that's his dream wish list of shortstops, whether it's him or it's Bogarts that could potentially land in Chicago. Like they're eyeballing what he's got, and I don't blame him. You still got great years on Trey Turner.
But are we talking Chicago North Side or Chicago South Side?
Oh, the Cubs. I mean, the Cubs need something.
That I'm real curious to see what, if any, type of moves that the Cubs try to make this coming off season. I'm actually very intrigued because they blew that whole team up. And it's crazy to see what's left and what's not there anymore. Like, what are they going to do this offseason?
Yeah. And they didn't even ship out guys like Ian Happ and Wilson Contreras.
And I thought Contreras was going to be gone. I swore up and down that Contreras was going to end up going to a contender and being out of there. I was very surprised.
I thought so too. Like if you were going to accumulate picks or if you were going to accumulate a couple minor leaguers, I thought that was really what was going to be the deal. Because if I had to think, like teams that would have needed catchers, I would have seen. I probably would have seen a deal with potentially Cleveland in a way. I could have seen that being a fit, and then I mean. Because right now the Mets, they are sold on Alvarez. They're not getting rid of him.
No,
they're not even going to try to move him. No. I think he's going to be great next year. I think that kid's he's got a lot of potential upside. I've seen some highlights of him in the minor leagues. I think he's going to be great, and I think that's going to give Jacob deGrom a different look, especially when it comes to a play caller. Like that is going to be interesting. So
Prez just said, I thought Wilson was going to go to the Mets. Not going to lie. You know what? And it was something that was talked about throughout the media for a while. As they got closer to the trade deadline, it was like, no, it's not going to happen. James McCann is not a guy that I'm very high on. Look, we kind of shit the money bed with letting Travis d'Arnaud go and what he's been doing for the Braves. But it is what it is. It is what it is.
Oh yeah.
They're also talking about they've already talked about potential like big hitters that we should potentially be looking at this offseason. And Josh Bell is one of them. He's actually a guy that I've followed for years. I've really liked him as a talent. And a guy that I've always said he would be good as a DH for us, even if they flop back and forth between him and Pete Alonso. Jose Abreu is another one that's up there for us right now. And JD Martinez obviously is a DH for him. I don't know, though. Like at this point, I'm not sure. I'm very optimistic about this offseason and what we can do. And are we going to bring back DeGrom? Are we bringing back Diaz? I'm looking forward to the winter meeting starting. And then just for me, loving baseball as much as I do, growing up playing it, the winter meetings is always something I always get excited about because that's when the shit fucking gets real and you start seeing moves and you're like, oh my God, this is happening. Like, I'm excited for that.
So if you don't mind, because it is that time again where we got NFL Prime predictions, dude, I'm on a winning record right now. I got a lot of picks right now that have been really, really on fire. If you don't mind, because we do have our NFL Prime predictions, if you want to stick around for that.